we have entered the era of modern laboratory-produced ambers that are just conquering the world of perfumeries. I can smell these ambers at every corner. I found them in shower gels. I found them in hair products. It's like once upon a time, corn syrup conquered the food industry and it could be found in any edible product. The same is happening with these modern ambers. But what makes me angry is these ambers, they have a particular scent profile that annoys me quite a lot, and I find it really everywhere. These ambers have entered expensive niche perfume houses. They have destroyed some of my favorite fragrances, and they continue destroying the perfumes that I love. And I don't know if in a few years we find any products without these kind of ambers. To be clear, I'm not a chemist. I don't know most of these chemical elements. So this video is not really an educational lecture, but my thoughts and ideas and some knowledge that I have obtained about these ambers. I wish I could tell you more about different kinds of ambers, and I wish perfumers actually put them in their pyramids so I could learn how these elements smell. When I started digging into this topic, a lot of things started making sense. Let's start from the beginning. Once upon a time, consumers had no clue about these modern ambers. All we saw in the description was amber, cedarwood, ambergris. Then somehow, at one point, they decided to reveal Ambroxan. That was probably the first chemical element that consumers now know about. So Ambroxan now is included into descriptions. But at the same time, there's a long list of these ambers that we still don't know. Do you remember the first descriptions of Baccarat Rouge when it just came out? It was cedarwood, almonds, fir resin, and ambergris. And I remember when I first smelled it, I was told that it was an amber fragrance, and I was like, I think it's a musk. And this is a part that confused me for a very long time. And in most of my videos, I call this base modern amber musk because I have something sharp that makes me think of musk. But the confusion does not end with that. Some of these modern ambers, they have certain qualities that they smell like patchouli. So a lot of people think, okay, there's patchouli in the base, but in fact, this is just that modern amber that has a scent profile including patchouli. And it's only later that the Maison Francis Kurkdjian revealed that they have Ambroxan. I think that's the time when Ambroxan became very popular. It had been used before. For example, the house Juliette Has a Gun had been using Ambroxan for a long time. And some of their fragrances with Ambroxan were actually quite popular, including Not a Perfume, Sunny Side Up. But most people didn't think about this Ambroxan thing. So now we know that one of the most popular fragrances, Baccarat Rouge 540, has Ambroxan. And I have seen some debates on internet when people were saying like, oh, the first Baccarat Rouge, it was so nice, and because it didn't have Ambroxan. The thing is, it always had Ambroxan. It's just it was not put into the official description. Then the story goes on. They decided to go from eau de parfum to extrait de parfum. And that was another topic of debate. Which one is better, EDP or extrait? And a lot of people noticed that extrait de parfum did not project as much, did not have that nice floral element that made Baccarat Rouge so airy, fluffy. It's like extrait that was not more intense. And in those observations, people were absolutely right. The thing is that they increased the dose of Ambroxan in their extrait, and Ambroxan has a quality of toning down other ingredients. And that's exactly what happened. Ambroxan itself was not very loud. It's an element a lot of people don't feel, but it's the element that kills other notes. And that's what happened. That's why extrait is not more intense than the EDP version. To me, Ambroxan sounded more like a mix of amber and musk that is not as annoying to my nose. It might be when there's too much of it, but there are a lot of fragrances with Ambroxan that I actually really like. Another example where these modern ambers destroy perfumes by toning down other elements is Burberry Goddess. When Burberry Goddess came out, I was like, wow, this is a really nice designer scent. And up to now, the original version is probably one of my favorite designer scents. I think it's really nicely balanced, beautifully composed. A few months ago, Burberry released a Burberry Goddess Intense. We think that the perfume will be more intense. And that's not the case. That happened with Baccarat Rouge, and that's exactly what happened with Burberry Goddess. So they added these ambers in the base, very strong ambers that have this woody scent with animalic notes. And these ambers, they just kill vanilla. Everybody was waiting for nicer, stronger vanilla, and at the end we have vanilla killed, and we get that woody animalic amber. And that's the example that really makes me mad, that makes me angry. Vanilla is a note that is actually pretty difficult to kill. Usually we see it in the base of the pyramid, and usually vanilla is a note that lasts pretty long. So imagine the strength of these modern ambers that they managed to kill vanilla. One of the best examples for this is a fragrance that I totally hate, but it's one of the popular fragrances nowadays, and it's called Vanilla Powder. The reason that I hate it is because they don't even mention that this is an amber fragrance. What we have in the base is sandalwood and musk. But believe me, there is some kind of modern amber in here. And most likely, this is Ambrocenide. Ambrocenide is a modern amber musk that is produced in laboratories from the essential oils of juniper berries and cedarwood. Yet it is considered semi-synthetic. The scent profile of Ambrocenide is mostly sharp, woody, mostly with cedarwood, but also includes animalic notes and some undertones that are similar to agarwood. That is the official description of the scent profile of Ambrocenide. In reality, the way I recognize Ambrocenide is by the smell of something like a mix of cat's litter, acetone, and maybe menstrual blood. Ambrocenide is very common. It's used quite a lot in many fragrances, but we rarely see it revealed. If you look at Fragrantica, it does exist as a note. We can find it in the description of certain fragrances, but it's not very common. It's not as common as Ambroxan, for example. The best example to know how Ambrocenide smells like, I think, is Instant Crush. When I smelled it, I was like, okay, I recognize there is something woody in here, but it smells mostly animalic to me. And animalic in a sense that it smells like, I'm sorry, but it smells like menstrual blood. Ironically, this is a scent profile that is very popular nowadays and used a lot by even very expensive brands. If we take Sergioff, if we take Tiziana Terenzi, Louis Vuitton, all of them have fragrances with Ambrocenide. And what's the most annoying is that they substitute oud with Ambrocenide. And that's the other reason why I'm so angry about these modern ambers, because I really love oud. I don't really care so much about its natural nature, I just love the way it smells. If they were able to chemically imitate the smell of natural agarwood, I would not mind. But when they give this Ambrocenide, and I already told you how it smells to me, and they say this is agarwood or oud, that's the time I say, well, no, it's not. And we are not protected by the price. If you think that the more you pay, the better quality you get, you are totally wrong. When it comes to amber oud, there are two possible scenarios. One of them is I barely feel any oud, and I still get that ambery woody profile with cedarwood dominating the scent. The second option is that amber oud takes a direction of feces. One of the best examples for that is Myriad by Louis Vuitton. It's one of the most expensive fragrances out there. I believe there are people out there who don't smell it the same way I do and who love this combination of roses and oud created by Louis Vuitton. But to me, it really smells like matière fécale, and there is nothing I can do about it. Then the things get even worse for me when these ambers are taken into all directions at the same time. Have you seen fragrances that have patchouli, oud, wood, amber, musk, leather? Have you seen these kind of fragrances? those are the ones that really give me a headache. And one of the best examples for that is Mumbai Noise by Byredo. Overall, I like the way Byredo does their ambers, but Mumbai Noise is really something out of this world. It's really olfactively shocking to me. Many modern amber masks have an interesting quality of expanding. You probably have already tried some fragrances that sound very quiet at the beginning, and then they start gaining intensity, and in 1 hour they are so intense, so annoying, and they smell completely different than they were at the beginning. One of the best examples for that is Oud Maracuja by Maison Crivelli. So this Oud Maracuja has nice maracuja fruity notes, but they are killed very, very quickly by that strong and expanding amber. And I have news for you, there is no oud, it's just that chemical amber. But the projection of it, the longevity of it is just out of this world. When I smelled it, I had a feeling that some of my nerves, some of my cells that detect smells, that they just died. It's just like shocking and annoying. Luckily, nothing was damaged in my nose, but after that fragrance, it's really hard to smell anything else. Another fragrance of Maison Crivelli that has a totally misleading profile is called Tuberose Astral. Beautiful name. I always pay attention to fragrances that have tuberose in their name. But this one is really something unusual. First of all, the tuberose is not tuberose. I don't know what kind of imaginary synthetic flower that is. There is something charming in it, but all that charm is killed once again by that modern amber. And this modern amber in this particular fragrance doesn't have just that woody animalic profile. To me, it smells like a derivative of a petroleum industry. I have a feeling that I am sitting at the gas station smelling some synthetic flowers that are very far from tuberose. While I'm sitting here and complaining about the strength of modern ambers by Maison Crivelli, their line that is called Choc Olfactif is actually among the best sellers. And it really demonstrates that people receive modern ambers in a very different way. Sometimes I have a feeling that I'm some kind of an outsider who has special detectors for these modern ambers, because once I detect them, I really have hard time smelling anything else. And another example of this is my review of the house called Giardini di Toscana. This is a house that gave us a famous Bianco Latte. Bianco Latte is okay in my opinion, because this modern amber base is very hidden and toned down and not so annoying. But the entire house uses these modern ambers so much that most of their fragrances I could not even describe just because of these modern ambers, particularly the one that is called Christos. There they use amber extreme. And I really appreciate that the house actually made it transparent, that they put this amber extreme in their profile. So now we know how amber extreme smells like. One of the thoughts where I was trying to find some comfort from my anger and madness is that I'm going to stick to the perfumes that I've always loved. But unfortunately, that was not a safe place, because these modern amber masks, they've entered the perfume houses that I loved for many years, and they destroyed several fragrances that were in the list of my top favorites. One of the examples is Ormond Jane. I always loved their fragrance called Levante. It's one of their top sellers. It's very similar to Fleur Narcotique by Ex Nihilo, but it is much softer. It's more feminine. And recently, I received a new sample of Levante. I noticed that Ormond Jane changed the design of their bottles, but I did not think that their fragrances were reformulated, especially Levante, that was just so perfect to me. Cedarwood was always a part of their description, but it was very soft, while that bright floral bouquet was something that always charmed me. So this bright floral bouquet was now suppressed by that cedarwood, and the fragrance is now going more into the woody direction. I wouldn't say that the last version of Levant is the most annoying kind of amber. It's not that I hate the last version, but I just know that the previous version was so much better to me, that I loved it so much. Fortunately, I got some backups, and some of the fragrances that I love I have in older versions, and I think I'm just gonna stick to those. Another example of the house that was really traditional, I would even describe it more as old-fashioned, and I did not think that these modern amber masks would enter that house. But it did happen. And I'm talking about Nicolai Perfumer from Paris. Recently, they came up with fragrances that are oriented towards modern tastes. They are lighter, fresher, they are not as heavy as most of their bestsellers. 3 of them are actually more of a gourmand creations that are associated with the French desserts. But guess what? All of these fragrances, they change their amber base. They now use these modern ambers. In some fragrances, it's less visible. In some fragrances, it's more prominent. A very strange one is Pavlova. I don't know why they named it Pavlova, that's another story, but the fragrance is actually dominated by pineapple, which I know is not everyone's cup of tea, especially people that are oriented towards niche perfumes. They usually don't like pineapple. So here we have pineapple with a base of cedarwood again. And while I enjoy that tropical opening, while I enjoy wearing it, when that base with cedarwood starts coming out on my skin, I'm irritated one more time. Why? I just smell them everywhere. I cannot handle it anymore. I'm even thinking that I will just ignore all the fragrances that have cedarwood in their base, at least those that were created in the past 2-3 years. Because every time I smell a new fragrance with cedarwood at the base, I'm like, okay, I know this base. I don't want this base anymore. Well, I think I have been complaining enough in this video, and I don't want to finish on this negative note. So I would like to say that, first of all, we don't feel ambers the same way. Many people don't even smell anything when they smell fragrances like Not a Perfume, Another by Le Labo, or even Baccarat Rouge by Francis Courjean. As for me, I don't really hate all the ambers. Some ambers work better than the others. For example, I like the base of Mojave Ghost. Meanwhile, I don't like the base of a lot of diptyque fragrances. Also, there are some combinations that work better for me than others. For example, when ambers smell more like papyrus and glass, that is something that I like. I also like when modern ambers are mixed with very strong coconut notes, or some other notes that are sweet and they tone down this ambery woody base. And the second thing is that you should keep in mind is the way I smell things is not necessarily something that will be your experience. If you have thoughts about modern ambers that you love or hate, please share in the comments.